Yo, what's happening, Raider Nation? It's your boy Soto here. You know what it is. Raiders versus the world. Talk about the team that the world loves to hate, your Las Vegas Raiders. All right, so we're not talking about any current Raiders right now. We're talking about a little bit of history. Ex-head coach Jon Gruden is involved in this crazy lawsuit with the NFL and Roger Goodell, and who knows exactly what's going on. But there was a huge development the other day, and we need to talk about it. So let me just lay the stage out there, okay? Jon Gruden, when he was forced to resign as head coach of the Raiders, like a month later, okay, he was forced to resign in October. In November, he filed a lawsuit against the NFL, saying it was unfair. He was targeted. The emails were released on purpose, and this and that, right? Okay. Well, initially, the NFL submitted a motion to have the lawsuit go to arbitration instead of going through an actual court. The NFL does this because they want to control what's going on. Normally, that works because people who are in litigation against the NFL or people who are employed by the NFL. What happens is they go to this arbitration and the arbiter is Roger Goodell. So most times Roger Goodell is basically hearing a case against himself or against one of the owners who he works for, and he's not going to really side with them. It's kind of a kangaroo court. It's weird. But Jon Gruden was not an employee of the NFL when he filed the lawsuit. So what at the time people were thinking, oh well, this is it, it's going to go to arbitration, and Roger Goodell's not going to say, oh yeah, I did it, I'm guilty. He's going to be like, whatever, Jon Gruden, go away. Well, Jon Gruden and his lawyers filed a motion of their own, and they said, you know what, we want the Nevada Supreme Court to take a look at this. Now, normally when the Nevada Supreme Court looks at something, it's only 3 judges, and Jon Gruden lost the first go around 2-1. Well, when you appeal that decision, it's all the Supreme Court judges in Nevada, which there are 7 of them. And in this case, the Nevada Supreme Court ruled 5-2 in Jon Gruden's favor. Now, what does that mean? Basically, it means that this trial is actually going to go into court. So there's going to be a discovery phase. If it goes that far, there's going to be witnesses called, and a lot of people may get exposed for what's been going on. Now, this is very similar to what happened to Jon Gruden when they weren't even investigating Jon Gruden. All right. We'll get to all that stuff in a second. But this can be really big and really bad for a lot of people, most notably Roger Goodell, because he's the guy at the very tippy top, and he's the guy that has to answer for all this stuff. And I'll tell you something right now. If owners were involved, owners are not going to stick their necks out for Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell works for them. They're not going to stick their neck out for Roger Goodell. So Roger Goodell is probably going to get punished, maybe get clipped if this gets really bad. So what's going to happen now? What does the decision mean? Okay, basically what it means is this. The NFL has an arbitration clause, meaning that if there's any discrepancy or a lawsuit or anything like that, any litigation with a decision by the NFL, then they go through arbitration. Now, like I said, that doesn't count right now because Jon Gruden was not an employee of the NFL when he filed this lawsuit. So what's going to happen now is, since they said, know what, this arbitration clause that only 3 of the Supreme Court judges cited for initially, is they called it unconscionable. Now, let's take a listen to this. Unconscionable in a legal sense means this, like, as far as Jon Gruden's lawsuit goes. Basically, they're saying that an unconscionable contract or clause, like the NFL's arbitration clause, is one-sided, oppressive, or unjust, and cannot be enforced in good conscience. So basically, the unequal bargaining power or exploitative power of the person who's doing the arbitration, it makes this unfair, basically. And that's really the crux. That's the big first step, because all Jon Gruden really wants, in all honesty, initially with this lawsuit, is to find out what happened. That's really it. Find out who stabbed him in the back, find out what really happened. And how do you do that? You go to the discovery phase. Because I'll tell you something right now. If somebody was told, hey, you need to look for Jon Gruden's emails, that person didn't do anything wrong, right? That person just did what he was told to do. The person telling him to do it and then leaking it and targeting Jon Gruden, now that is something different, especially when the initial investigation wasn't even about Jon Gruden. So somebody gets put on the stand, some pencil pusher, some button pusher on a computer is like, hey man, what happened? He has to spill it, because then he's going to be committing perjury, and he doesn't want to do that if he didn't do anything wrong. If he admits to everything that he did, but he didn't break any laws himself, Yeah, he's going to do it, right? So the big first step right now is to get this out of arbitration, which happened, okay? Now, on top of that, Jon Gruden and his lawyers want this to go into the discovery phase. That means all those 750,000 emails are going to be let loose. People are going to scour through them, and man, who knows what's going to be in those emails? If they targeted Jon Gruden with like maybe 5, 6, 7 emails, and this is what they found, imagine what's going to be there if they look through all 750,000. Now, the worst part about this initially, right now, before we know what's any of those emails, is Roger Goodell said with a straight face, okay, with a straight face, looked into a camera and told everybody, there's nothing else in these emails. We looked through them and there's nothing there. Wow. That's rough. So Caroline Fenton and Jason Fitz, who is actually a really big Raider fan, and Mike Florio over at Yahoo Sports Daily talked about it, and this is what they said.
Just to set the scene, what do you know? What's the important things? Give us the spark notes about this case and what it could potentially mean, not just for Gruden, but for the NFL as well.
Well, the NFL has a longstanding practice of taking any case that is brought against it and initially looking for a way to force it into arbitration. And the league uses a unique type of arbitration. It's presided over by the commissioner or whoever the commissioner appoints to handle the arbitration. So it's rigged and it's secret and it's a kangaroo court. And that's just the way it is. And that's what the NFL was trying to do with Jon Gruden, specifically relying on a clause in the NFL's constitution and bylaws to force Gruden to pursue his claims against the league and the commissioner that basically they weaponized secret emails from the Washington investigation to force him out as the Raiders coach during the 21 season. The goal was to put that in arbitration. Initially, Gruden won. The Nevada Supreme Court, a 3-judge panel, found for the league. Gruden threw a Hail Mary pass to the full 7-judge court, and yesterday they found by a 5-2 vote that the case must proceed in open court with full-blown discovery, with public scrutiny of whatever is available through the filings and court proceedings, et cetera. So we're going to find out, unless this thing gets overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court or it gets settled, we're going to find out who ordered the code red against Jon Gruden, which kind of tells me the case is probably going to get settled before it comes to that point.
In your mind, now that we've gotten to this point, is settlement really still an option?
There was a quote from a report on ESPN.com 2 years ago, which took a deep dive into this issue. And they said that Gruden wants to burn the house down. Now, that's easy to say until they start putting money on the table that causes you to say, maybe I shouldn't burn the house down. And I think the other wrinkle here, does he suddenly become a viable candidate to be an NFL head coach in 2026, coincidentally to the fact that he has the tiger by the tail now? So there's a lot of different ways this can go. And I don't want to downplay the possibility of this thing going to the U.S. Supreme Court. The NFL tried to do that when it was sued over the relocation of the Rams several years ago. They tried to go to the U.S. Supreme Court and get a ruling that the case had to go to arbitration. So I think the league, which has been quiet so far, will eventually try its own Hail Mary pass. But, you know, there's something to be said for these things happening in open court where sunlight will shine, where we will know what's happening. Because at the end of the day, regardless of how you feel about Gruden, regardless of what you think happened or didn't happen, he was taken out 5 games into the 2021 season. Someone undermined the integrity of the entire season by targeting Gruden and taking him out during the season. Could have happened before, could have happened after. And I just think from that perspective, we all have a right to know how it went down and who it was that leaked those emails that resulted in Gruden no longer being coach of the Raiders.
How damaging could this be to a league that feels impenetrable?
Well, we have to look at the context here. There was an investigation that was conducted into the Washington football organization that resulted in the accumulation of hundreds of thousands of pages of emails. A small handful of those emails were harvested and specifically selected by someone to be used against Jon Gruden. There weren't many people that had access to those emails. So we will find out who had access to those emails. And whoever it was, depending upon who it was, once we find that out, that will depend and that will determine the damage that's done. Was it the commissioner? We don't know. Was it Daniel Snyder? We don't know. But again, there aren't many people that had access to these emails. And that's the first question. That's the most important question. And the NFL will probably go kicking and screaming trying to keep anyone from knowing the answer to that question. Who was it that sent the emails first to the Wall Street Journal, and then when that didn't take Gruden out, to the New York Times on a Monday, and then by Monday night, he was gone?
Are you surprised that we haven't gotten that information somehow, some way through some reporting?
Well, yes and no, because when the NFL wants to keep a secret, the NFL does a pretty good job of keeping a secret. Pablo Torre and I collaborated on a collusion ruling that was issued against the NFL in a case brought by the NFLPA. And even though the NFL won, there's some stuff in there that was not good for the NFL. That was under wraps for more than 5 months until Pablo and I decided we were going to get to the bottom of it. And frankly, we are already talking about joining forces again to find out who leaked the emails in this case before it's known within the context of any official court proceeding. And look, whether we do or whether we don't, whether we get to the bottom of it, who knows? But what the hell? Let's give it a try and see if we can find out. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about. That's what journalism is. And it takes work, and it can be a pain in the butt, but you're trying to get to the truths that are hidden. It's very easy to dabble in the transactional stuff and report that someone's going to be signed 5 minutes before the team announces it. The hard stuff is getting to the stuff they don't want us to know. They clearly don't want us to know this, and they've managed for nearly 4 years to keep us from finding out.
Do you think there's a growing level of distrust in the National Football League?
Well, there's the games we watch on TV, the bright, shiny objects that keep the fans distracted. And then there's all the stuff that happens behind the curtain that most people just don't care about, but they should care about it. It's important to care about balance between the league and the union. You don't want it to get too far out of balance. And it's important to understand what happened here, regardless of what Gruden does or doesn't do. Does he settle? Does he take it all the way to the end? Somebody targeted the coach of one of the 32 franchises to be fired during the season when they had the information in June, and they could have handled it before the season started, or they could have waited until the season was over. The integrity, and we hear all the time, oh, the integrity of the game, it's so important. Well, why in the hell did somebody undermine the integrity of an entire season by taking out one of the 32 coaches? So that part is important. And we try to get people to understand why it's important. And we try to distract them from the distractions that come, especially during football season, almost every day of the week, right? There's a controversy on a Tuesday. Oh, we got a game on Thursday. We'll forget about it by Friday. There's a controversy on Friday. We'll forget about it by Sunday. And that's the thing. During the season, it's impossible to get fans to focus on these issues because there's always the next game that everyone is anticipating.
Mark Davis has never shied away from feeling like the rug was pulled out from the Raiders and him during that season. So knowing that this is Jon Gruden versus the NFL, which obviously impacts the Raiders, how do they play this entire situation out?
Well, I think Mark Davis is a very interested observer in all of this. I don't know whether he'll be called to testify. Presumably he will be, because he could have rejected the offer by Jon Gruden to resign. He could have doubled down and said, I'm keeping my coach. I'm not going to be strong-armed into getting rid of him. He may have some important information. And will he break ranks with his partners? Will he break ranks with the league office? But he'll mention from time to time what happened to Gruden, what happened to the team. Look, with Rich Bisaccia as the interim coach, they went to the playoffs. They almost beat the Bengals in the wild card round. There was a controversial call in that game that could have caused it to go the other way. And the Bengals went to the Super Bowl that year. So if Gruden's there, and presumably they fare better with the guy who had coached them for the entirety of the offseason, preseason, and 5 weeks of the regular season, maybe they could have beaten the Bengals. Maybe they would have done better. So, yeah, every Raiders fan should still be upset about what happened, and Mark Davis absolutely should be upset. And it'll test his loyalty to the Shield, to Big Shield, as the case may be.
What is the most likely turnout from this Jon Gruden versus the NFL?
Well, really, the first question is, do they take it to the U.S. Supreme Court, and what happens there? There are some fascinating political wrinkles that apply here that we don't have time to get into. But if and when they face discovery, I think Jon Gruden is made an offer that he will be unable to justify refusing, because it'll be the kind of money that you just don't say no to. And who knows? Maybe Jon Gruden goes from being persona non grata to head coach of an NFL team, coincidentally, when the 2026 hiring cycle rolls around.
Whoa, that's a lot of stuff. And I think it was summarized nicely by Mike Florio. Let's take a look at the timeline of events, okay? I'm going to be reading this, okay? So just bear with me, okay? Between 2010 and 2018, Jon Gruden was, while working with ESPN as an analyst, exchanged emails with Bruce Allen, who was then in the front office of the Commanders, and it was containing some racist stuff, some homophobic stuff, some transphobic stuff, some just bad stuff, okay? Now, the NFL got wind of this when they were investigating the Washington Commanders' workplace environment, and more specifically, Dan Snyder and his conduct. So they weren't even looking for anything in emails. They were just looking for communication with Dan Snyder, what was going on, what led to this toxic environment with the Commanders. So these emails were from 2010 to 2018. Right. Now, 2011, Gruden sent an email to Bruce Allen, a good friend of his, during the NFL lockout. Yeah, it was not appropriate, basically. He described DeMaurice Smith, who was the NFLPA executive director at the time, and he said that he had lips. Look, I'm going to say it because we're all adults, okay? He said he had lips the size of Michelin tires. That's what he said. Now, Gruden says that the marks, yeah, they were insensitive and everything, but Gruden claims that he meant that he had rubber lips, like he was a liar. Well, I don't buy it. I think it was racist. I don't think it was appropriate, but none of that matters right now. That's not what this whole thing is about. In 2014, he used some homophobic language against Michael Sam, who was the first openly gay athlete to be drafted in the NFL. Okay. Now, as this investigation went on in like 2021, early 2021, Gruden was flagged for another emails. There were like over 650,000 emails that were like looked at, and only these came up, which is kind of strange. So the U.S. House of Representatives, they had an oversight committee over the people that were looking into the Commanders. So it was like a big government thing, right? They released a report, and including testimony from Dan Snyder himself and Bruce Allen, where Allen claimed the NFL officials indicated the Commanders leaked the emails. So Dan Snyder and Bruce Allen told U.S. House of Representatives Oversight Committee, they told the government that the Commanders leaked those emails on Jon Gruden. Now, I don't know that there's like some type of competitive advantage they're trying to gain or something. They're in a different conference, different, sides of the country, right? Someone had to tell the people with the Commanders to leak this stuff, because it didn't like cut the Commanders off the hook. Like Dan Snyder was still forced basically to sell his team, right? So it wasn't like he got off scot-free by what he was doing because he's shone the light on Jon Gruden. No, that was just a convenient scapegoat, right? So it gets even further than this. October 8th, okay, the Wall Street Journal published the first leaked email about DeMaurice Smith, the whole Michelin thing, right? Gruden apologized, claiming no racial intent. This is what I talked about. And he said he used rubber lips to mean he was lying. That's kind of far-fetched, but whatever. We don't have to agree. We don't have to disagree. That's not the point right now. Let's see here. NFL spokesperson condemned it as appalling. Raiders owner Mark Davis said it did not represent the team. And DeMaurice Smith noted it wasn't his, meaning Jon Gruden's first racist comment. All right, that's October 8th, okay? October 10th, a couple days later, Gruden admitted to ESPN sending emails disparaging NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, where he called him a clueless anti-football P-word. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say the whole word. I don't want to get demonetized, okay? But that's what he said, okay? He called him a clueless anti-football P-word. Now, who would order this quote-unquote code red on Jon Gruden? Maybe a person that's in power that was directly insulted quite severely. Because, look, football, anti-football P-word, it's pretty funny, okay? And, you have people around talking to you, talking about you behind your back, calling, hey, there's the anti-football P-word, It's just not a good look. It's not a good look for Roger Goodell. And that's who I'm thinking it's kind of tilted towards, because who has the authority to tell an NFL franchise to leak certain emails to punish a specific person, to kind of get the attention away from the franchise and away from the NFL, and like they were saying on Yahoo Sports Daily, away from the shield, right? Focus on one guy, have him be the scapegoat and get him out of there, and maybe the rest of the waters will calm down, right? The next day, on October 11th, New York Times detailed more emails, and a lot of more homophobic stuff and transphobic and all this other stuff came out. That's not good. No, Gruden was forced to resign, and Mark Davis accepted Jon Gruden's resignation on October 11th, 2021, just 5 games into the season, like we heard on Yahoo Sports Daily. Okay, moving on. The next month, the very next month, in November of 2021, Jon Gruden filed a lawsuit against the NFL and Roger Goodell, named Roger Goodell specifically, in Nevada court. Now, alleging that there was what he called a malicious and orchestrated campaign to destroy his career by selectively leaking his emails, forcing him into resignation. Okay, a few years later, some time has passed now. In May of 2024, that's when the Nevada Supreme Court ruled 2-1 in favor of the NFL to dismiss Jon Gruden's lawsuit in an open court in favor of arbitration. Now, Gruden's lawyer, he's like, dude, this is outrageous. This is crazy. This is nothing's going to happen if this continues to go this way. So they submitted a motion basically for the entire Supreme Court, like I talked about, to look at this case and to see if arbitration was lawful and legal or if it was just some nonsense, right? That was in October of 2024. Okay, so that was less than a year ago. Now, just a couple days ago, the Nevada Supreme Court ruled 5-2, like we talked about, against the NFL in favor of Jon Gruden and his lawyers, saying, you know what? This is nonsense. This whole arbitration thing is freaking crazy. And, we can't do that. It's not lawful. It's not legal. It's not going to be a impartial court. It's not going to be it's going to be too one-sided for that to happen. Okay, now, why is this so important? Okay, well, there's one last Hail Mary, and Mike Florio kind of alluded to it, is going to the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court. And the NFL's done this before when they were sued by the city of St. Louis for moving the Rams. But here's the issue with this. The Supreme Court doesn't have to accept the motion. They don't have to hear the case. They can just be like, you know what? No, this is nonsense. We're not going to bother with this. So not everything that's brought to the Supreme Court, they actually rule on. Now, what if it does get ruled on? Well, we'll have to take a look at a couple things. And this is not on any type of political rant or anything like that. This is just facts. I'm just spitting facts right now. Jon Gruden is a pretty staunch Republican. He's a pretty conservative guy, politically at least. And he's kind of chummy with the president of the United States. And I'm not saying that President Trump doesn't like the NFL, but that's kind of what I'm saying. President Trump does not like the NFL. President Trump tried to buy an NFL franchise a bunch of times, and a lot of stuff got in the way. The NFL got in the way a couple times. After Trump was involved in the USFL thing in like the mid to late 80s, after that, the NFL just blocked him at every step. He's tried to buy an NFL franchise at least a handful of times and was blocked every single time. So there's something there. I don't know that this is going to basically say, you know what, we're going to go against the NFL because I want to stick it to them. The Supreme Court just doesn't have to look at the case at all. And I think, honestly, with the type of ruling that we're looking at here, like, yeah, Roger Goodell's going to preside over this case that's against him, or he's going to appoint somebody personally to preside over this. I just don't think this is going to be looked at. I really don't. I think this is going to move forward. And if Jon Gruden sticks to his guns and he's like, you know what, I'm not going to settle. I want the discovery phase to come out. I want every single piece of information out, good, bad, or indifferent. It could be bad for a lot of people in the NFL, most notably Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner. All right, guys, that's my time for today. Really appreciate you guys watching. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to this video. It's an excellent way to support the channel. It's absolutely free to do, and it's the bare minimum you can do to support the channel. Besides doing absolutely nothing, just watch the video. Guys, let me know in the comments below. What do you think about what's going on here with the Jon Gruden case against the NFL and Roger Goodell? What's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? For sure, the NFL is going to appeal to the Supreme Court. What do you guys think about this whole situation? I'm not excusing anything that Jon Gruden did whatsoever, but two wrongs don't make a right. And ultimately, this is something that should have been handled a very different way. And you can't let people get away with stuff like this on both ends. And if there was a lot more stuff like this that didn't want to release for whatever reason, if you're going to punish one, you should punish all, especially if you have the information. I want to make sure everyone, please, to tell your friends, tell your haters, tell your mamas, tell everybody. Raiders versus the world is the greatest thing going to Red Nation today. All right, guys, it's my time. Till next time, everybody. Peace. Hey, Raider Nation. Thanks for watching. There's plenty more where that came from. Go ahead and smash that like button, drop a comment, make sure to subscribe and share to all your socials. It's the bare minimum you can do without doing absolutely nothing.